Everyone out there, hello. You might not know who I am. You might not know my story. But I'm going to tell you something here. I'm going to tell you now some things. 10 years ago, I was the victim of a violent assault. Someone pushed me, and they meant to push me backwards onto the bed behind me. But I had a severe sciatic nerve injury at the time from a near-death experience, right? I could barely walk and stand. The back of my right leg, the back of my knee, caught the corner of our bed. And I've gone and fallen from the bed and gone flying into a wardrobe, breaking the wardrobe. So essentially, at this point, I've just been violently assaulted by someone. I didn't know if it was an accident or not. They've intentionally assaulted me, but accidentally made it worse because I fell through a wardrobe. So I've shouted at them, removed them from my personal space, move them back. Don't you ever fucking lay your hands on me again like that, you stupid bitch. And then went for a walk, which I normally did when shit like that happened. I'd go for a walk, try and calm down, figure out what was best to do, what the best course of action was, and come back to resolve the situation. This time, came back to the property, and the police were there. And my instant concern was for the mother of my child. We literally just had a 2-week-old baby, my first child. I've always wanted to be a dad. It's been my main thing I've wanted my entire life. Just to prove that you don't need to violently beat children to be a parent. You can actually talk to them, educate them, teach them. You don't need to just kick them and punch them like I was. Anyway, so they then asked who I was, and I told them my name. And then they asked what happened, and I said, well, we've had an argument. I didn't tell them why, because if I told them why, she would have been charged. So they then arrested me on suspicion of common assault. Now, bear in mind, I'm about 25 at this point, 24, something like that. This is the first arrest of my life. I've never been arrested before. I have never been arrested after. This is my first arrest ever. Never been in trouble with the police, ever. Anyway, so get the police station. It's a new police station, brand new, super police station. They've just built it, blah, blah, blah. They kept me in a cell for 23 hours and 42 minutes, right? They gave me, in that time, 1 glass of water and 2 sausages. I'm a 6'5" man. I need over 2,000 calories a day and far more water than, it's not a cup like this. It's one of them quarter cups, the paper ones. Anyway, I requested water and food loads, got nothing. And I didn't request a solicitor because I'd done nothing wrong. Why would I need a solicitor? I've done nothing wrong. They're going to work out what they've done wrong. They'll fix it. It'll be fine. And then they advised me they're going to interview me. And I'm thinking, well, I want a solicitor now then. So I said, well, if you're going to interview me, I want a solicitor. And I was told, bear in mind, this is a British police station by a British police officer. Oh, it's too late for that now. And the reason it was too late was because they can only hold you for 24 hours. They'd already held me for 23 hours, 42 minutes. So they couldn't have waited for me to have a solicitor. They'd have to release me. They couldn't then charge me, sort of thing. They fucked me over. They denied me legal representation, which is against human rights, by the way. That is against your human rights. Anyway, so did the interview. I was like, oh yeah, we've had an argument. And they said to me, oh, what happened, sort of thing? And I was like, well, I can't tell you. And I was like, well, I told them as much as I could, which is what I did, right? I couldn't tell them what she did. So I said I shouted at her, had an argument, blah, blah. And they asked me, do you think she feared for her safety? And I said, well, yeah, probably, because I've never shouted at her like that before. And the truth is, I had never shouted at her like that before. She had never violently assaulted me before, so I had never shouted like that before. I had shouted at her when I found out about the cheating, but it wasn't like that. I was at the other end of the room. It wasn't in close proximity, face to face. There was no violence between us over that. It was just emotional disturbance. So I had shouted before because she cheated on me, but not like that. So I was telling the truth, and I couldn't tell them why that she had assaulted me because they would have taken my newborn baby's mother away. She hadn't rang the police. I hadn't rang the police. Some neighbour heard me shouting at her and rang the police. Now, I'd love to say this was the end of it, but the police then charged me with common assault. which obviously I denied, and I'm innocent. And they didn't allow me to go home to my newborn baby or home. So then I was threatened with being put in prison if I didn't sign to go to this bail address at some dodgy place in the west end of Newcastle. And I had to stay there for 4 months. 4 months away from my newborn baby. Wasn't allowed to see her, wasn't allowed to see my partner. I'd done nothing wrong. Innocent man. I was the victim of a crime. Anyway, and I was being treated as a domestic abuser. And I get to the court day, and I speak to the solicitor, and he's like, I was like, so what happens if when I plead not guilty today? And he's like, well, your bail conditions will be extended. It could be up to 2 years, and then they can still find you guilty anyway. And I knew I had admitted to her being fearful of her safety. So from their perspective, they thought I was guilty, but they hadn't investigated the case correctly. The police, the social services, the courts, the Crown Prosecution Service, none of them had done their jobs properly. Because if they had, they would have worked out I was the victim of an assault, not a perpetrator of some assault. You can get charged with causing common assault for shouting at someone or anything, basically. It's not like ABH or GBH or like normal. Anyway, so I asked him, what happens if I plead guilty? And he says, well, your bail conditions would end, you receive a small fine, and you get to go home to your baby. So I pleaded guilty because I was being emotionally blackmailed with my newborn baby by being kept away from her. The most important thing in my life. The very most important thing in my fucking life. And I was wrongfully taken away from her. Why? Because I'm a man. Because of sexual discrimination. This made me so mentally unwell when I got back home that I ended up getting held on the Mental Health Act several times. And the police then came out to hold me under the Mental Health Act, and when I refused, severely injured me. My neck, my shoulder, it's fucked. Every day I'm in absolute agony because during the mental health detainments, they gave me lifelong injuries. Was anyone ever charged or anyone ever told off for it? No. I'm left with the injuries. I didn't even get physiotherapy or medical treatment for those injuries. Just pumped with antipsychotics when I got to the mental health treatment, which was also awful because that was because of what the police did. And then they made it worse by sending the police out to assault me. And if I'd run away, they would have sent the police after me. There was no winning. I had become a science experiment to my country, having an injection forced up my arse every 2 weeks that made me unwell, didn't help me in any way, just made me unwell for 2 years because of all this. Because the police didn't do their jobs properly, because a woman assaulted me, because I was wrongfully charged with a crime I was the victim of. Fast forward 10 years from that point, I have now handed evidence, a piece of paper, with an admittance of guilt from the perpetrator that they violently assaulted me and pushed me through a wardrobe. Now, I was charged with the crime of causing someone to unlawfully fear for their safety because I had no grounds or jurisdiction to do such a thing. I have now proved with evidence, concrete proved evidence, that I did have that right and I was innocent and they were wrong. And do you know what their response was? Oh, we've already dealt with this, so you already pled guilty to it. They emotionally blackmailed me with my newborn baby to force me to plead guilty. They might as well have fucking held a gun to my head. And now I've proved 10 years later with concrete physical evidence that they didn't do their jobs properly and they're just like, not our problem. They've given me lifelong injuries. They've tortured me for 10 years, emotionally, mentally, and physically. They've ruined mine and my daughter's life for 10 years. And they're just like, not our problem. And now I'm expected to somehow fight the courts, the police, the government, the CPS. When I've already proven with evidence that they're wrong, I still now have to somehow get them to do their jobs. Like, I'm exhausted from all this. Like, can the world out there help me somehow? Like, I try to speak to solicitors and lawyers, but some of them want $2,000 from me. This is an open and shut case. I've got the evidence to prove I'm innocent. I've handed it in. They need to do it. I'm sick of it. But I have been sexually discriminated against for 10 years because I'm a man. My only arrest of my entire life, and it sent me insane. And then I was treated as a medical experiment for it. So if you want to know some things about me, that's some of it. Have a nice day.